But I've made like in the ballpark of $35,000 this year. And I've worked a maximum of like 4 to 5 hours a week on client work on average. I think it comes back down to the value. Like I didn't, what I was doing in that project for €500 was essentially, it wasn't not valuable, but it was a load of admin. Actually take the time to look back and figure out how long stuff took you. Because ultimately revenue is one thing, but profitability is the most important thing at the end of the day. When I see that money come in, I'm also like, that's actually just paying my expenses for running my business. I don't necessarily see it as income that I take home, but it's almost like, okay, I don't actually have really any expenses in my business because it covers all of that.
Imagine landing a 10K project, earning thousands from affiliate links with zero ongoing effort and effortlessly adding hundreds of dollars to every project without raising your prices or asking for any more from your clients. Sounds too good to be true? Past Square Secrets business student Helen is here to show you exactly how she's done it. Helen, the creative force behind Rising Tide Creatives, is pulling back the curtain on her web designer business. From smart ways to incentivize referrals, to lessons learned about efficiency, business regrets, and what she would do differently now. This interview is full of gold for website designers looking to grow sustainably and strategically. Now, just for full transparency, Helen was a paying student in my course, and later we started working together. I just want to be in full integrity and give you all of that context. Helen has worked on my team in the past. So I hope you enjoy this behind-the-scenes look at Helen's journey.
Okay, Helen, do share with me. Tell me what you were doing before you became a website designer.
So before I was a web designer, immediately beforehand, I was running a dive and yoga center on like this tiny island in Indonesia with my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband. I mean, before that, I had a completely other career. Like I worked as a charity director. So I had like a part one and then a part two that involved lots of diving and boating, yoga and islands and traveling. And then I guess this is kind of the part three is the web design part.
And then did you have any experience in website design before? Or like, how did you feel considering to be a website designer when you had like such a different background, if that makes sense?
I mean, I literally had no experience. I'd had a tiny bit of design experience because I discovered Canva when I was running the dive shop, and we were like, I wanted to redesign some of the kind of dive menus and like yoga like schedule for the week, and so I found Canva and did that. But like really beyond that, I had no web design experience, and it was completely. I think I've heard you say like there are people who make a plan to get like career change, and there are people who it's kind of forced upon, and I was definitely in the. I wouldn't say forced upon. Well, yes, forced upon group in that I had to find some kind of job to do because COVID happened. I lost my job, my home, and ended up in a country where I didn't speak the language, and so it was a little bit like, okay, what am I going to do now? So I very much like stumbled upon it and was like, okay, let's just give it a go.
Yeah. So context for everyone. So yeah, you're working at this dive shop. COVID hits, all tourism basically comes to a complete halt, and then they were like, hey, we don't need anyone in the dive shop anymore, obviously. Okay, so then you move to France, or a small island, Martinique, which is part of France. So therefore, again, in a country you don't speak the language. And so then tell me about like, out of all the options, like, did you consider other things? Why did you choose web design?
I very much fell into it in the sense that I started teaching yoga online during the pandemic. Because I found we were actually at my boyfriend's parents' place just outside of Paris, like waiting for everything. Like we thought we were going like back from Indonesia for maybe a month whilst everything settled down, and then we'd like be back in our old job. So I was like, okay, how am I going to keep busy? I'm going to make some sourdough. I'm going to teach some yoga like online to my friends. It'll be fun. And then I was like, ooh, wouldn't it be nice to do a website for yoga? And then I'll share some recipes. I had this kind of like slightly lifestyle type blogging vibe, I suppose, that I was interested in. And so that was a really short-lived, but I did love making my website. And I had a few friends who got in touch who were like, ooh, I saw your website. Like, can you do something like that for me? And so that is really where it came from. And at that time, like, I suppose I got to the point where I started. So I think my first client was like the wife of the best friend of my husband. And it was very much like, I'll build your website, just pay me what you think it's worth at the end. And so that was the first money that I got for web design. And at the same time, I was kind of mulling over what else could I do in France. And I was like, I could be an au pair. I could clean houses. Like, it was really like, how do you get a job in a pandemic where you've just moved to a country you don't speak their language? And I think my confidence was just like rock bottom. So I was just like, how can I earn just enough money to like survive? Or go home to England. It was my other choice. But once I realized I could make money through web design and actually liked it, I think that was the thing that was just like, okay, this feels like a door I can easily push through. And there was so much like resource online to like try and figure out, okay, how am I going to do this thing? So yeah, it was kind of the only thing I really pursued, but it wasn't the only option that crossed my mind, that's for sure.
And then can you tell me, so you mentioned, and I totally get this, like you loved doing design. Like what part of it do you think is the bit that brings you the most joy, or what's the bit that you love the most?
I love that question because it's changed so much. At the beginning, the thing that I loved the most was like making something look beautiful, and also like figuring out, how do I do this thing? So like I started learning bits of CSS quite early on to be like, okay, how can I make this picture change when I hover over it? And I literally felt like a magician when it worked. I put it in, I was like, whoa, this thing works. This is like amazing. And so that was like what I loved most at the beginning. And now it's really different. Like, I love the analytical side of it now. Like, I still love making things that look beautiful, but I'm much more interested in like the strategy, SEO, like, and that kind of makes sense to me because I always liked aesthetic things. I've always loved like interior design and stuff like that. But my work has always been, I was a maths teacher, then I was a process expert. And like my life has been very much like Excel spreadsheet. And so web design is kind of perfect because it brings together the both. But I didn't see the second part of that until later on. And I think now that's the part that I love the most.
Then, okay, so let's talk about, again, so you mentioned that your very first client was like a wife of one of your husband's friends. Tell me about clients after that and what exactly, like, how did you determine what was your marketing strategy, or did you pick it right away, or did it take you some time to figure it out?
That's a great question as well, because I don't think I ever had a strategy, which was my like big mistake at the beginning. The way I got clients at the beginning was posting on Instagram, and we're talking like 4 or 5 years ago now. So Instagram was a place where you could be seen in a way that I don't really feel like it is anymore, or at least it's not been my experience that it has been. But I was posting there, and I had kind of extended network of family and friends, I guess, that I'd built over time. And that, I guess, the thing that I probably take away from that now and thinking about it is, it wasn't, nobody who I worked with at the beginning was somebody who I didn't in some way have a personal connection with. So I worked with an artist who actually is still a client, who was the mum of a teacher that I trained when I was training teachers. Like, I worked with a girl I did yoga teacher training with. I worked with, like, there was loads of people who it was like, not necessarily close friends, but like connections. And I think leveraging the network was by far and away, like, yes, Instagram was the way I got the word out, because I had people that were my friends anyway, or like following me. But that was very much at the beginning. And then that evolved as well, because I started really getting into blogging. And so my focus was very much on kind of thinking about that in longer term. But it took a while to get clients through blogging, but I'm really glad I started when I did, because that's definitely now the main way that I get clients. That and partnerships, referrals.
Yep. Okay, that's interesting about the networking thing, and I find this like so consistent with really successful past students, is like, in whether it's at the beginning of their business or still continuously over time, they're getting clients through some sort of, like, as you say, like networking, like not networking, it's just like people that you know, if that makes sense, and like through their network, if that makes sense. So can you tell me about, like, what were you posting? So it seems like it was your personal Instagram account. What were you posting on there? If someone wants to get clients through their network at the beginning, what should they do? What did you do?
So I guess the question is like, what did probably what's most useful to say is like what I did and then what I would do differently now looking back. So what I did at the time is I posted my work. I did quite a few stories where I'd be like, oh, today I'm doing this thing, or like I learnt this thing, and just kind of like chit-chatting to myself, talking about like tips and things. What I do now to leverage my network is I would be much more direct with people. I think I'd send messages to people that were in my network, just letting them know. And I can't remember who it was, but I saw one of your past students talking recently who said basically, she always says at the end of a call with somebody, is there anyone else who else should I know? Who else should I be speaking to? And I think that is such good advice, like starting that from the very beginning. You know, I'm looking to build my client base. Who else should I be speaking to? Because every individual has their own network, and that's what you kind of need to unlock. So yeah, I mean, it was really helpful. It definitely got me started because people knew what I was doing, and people that I'd worked with before, or people that I'm kind of friends with before. So that was really great. And just literally just sharing that I was doing this thing was useful. But I think being more direct would have been more useful and accelerated things more quickly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's a really good tip. It's good for people to know. I love that. Okay, now we're going to like speed ahead a bit in the business here. From like early days to more recently. You recently did a 10K project. Can you tell me about, I know that it is a goal for many people to get a project of that size. Can you tell me about like, one, was finding that project different than finding any other project? Let's start there, and then we'll go into like the actual work involved with that project.
Great question. Was it different? No, it wasn't different in the sense that a lot of my work now comes through. I have a couple of partnerships whereby people refer clients to me. And when I say partnerships, I mean, they're literally people who I did work for, and then like they tend to come to me now because I did work in the past for them. And I also, I mean, the other thing that I do is I offer a referral bonus to past clients if there's somebody who they refer to me who ends up working with me. And I'm relatively generous about that. So, and it's something that I particularly do with clients who I enjoyed working with and who have kind of similar budgets to the sorts of clients I want to work with now. I guess in terms of finding the person, yes, it was different to how I found like my very first clients, which were like my personal friends, like, and often that was like people, I'm going to do this side hustle, or I'm wanting to add this business. It wasn't people with, and I say this with a great deal of love, but it wasn't with people with like developed serious businesses yet. It was people who were like, I kind of want to try this thing. And so their budgets were obviously small because they weren't making any money. Yeah. So I guess the difference in finding this client now is that I've been more strategic in making it more explicit with the clients that I've worked with as I stepped up with my budget, that I would love to find more people like them. And also saying, and I also really appreciate you sharing, like if you enjoyed working with me, I also really appreciate you sharing the word. This is me like taking you out for dinner to say thank you, is the way that I put it. So it doesn't feel, I don't know, sleazy or bribey. Like to me, it feels very genuine. It's like, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Here's a percentage. So that was finding the client. And then in terms of, you asked about the amount of work in the project. Was that the second part of the question?
Yeah, I think that's something which people really worry about or wonder about is like, is a 10K project even worth me taking on because of the amount of work involved? Can you tell me about how, like what your experience has been with like 10K project versus like a 3K project, for example?
Yeah, so honestly, no. In fact, I was thinking about this earlier because it's towards the end of the year. So I was looking at my my stats for the year and like and also how the last few years have been, like kind of doing my annual reflection. One of the first sites I took on, I think I charged 500 euros for, and it was for an artist who had like 120 plus pieces of artwork that we set up as blog posts. And I mean, the number of hours it must have taken me, each one was tagged with the size of the paper and like the medium that it was made with and the year it was done. And I mean, honestly, it was hours and hours and hours and hours. And And this project, so it wasn't just web design. I did brand strategy, brand design, and web design. So it was it wasn't just web design. But in terms of the amount of time it took me, we turned everything around in about 3 weeks. And in that time, I would have been working, I don't know, I definitely wasn't working full-time hours on it. Like it was maybe 20 hours a week, 25 a week maximum, probably over those 3 weeks on that specific project. Whereas I would have worked probably more than that on the €500 project, closer to the beginning. So I think it comes back down to the value. Like I didn't, what I was doing in that project for €500 was essentially, it wasn't not valuable, but it was a load of admin. This time I was looking at like market positioning and creating a brand that this business could use to be landing, multiple tens of $1,000 clients for their business. And looking at how they could have a brand and web presence that was going to allow them to significantly increase their revenue in line with their revenue goals. And so that was really the big difference. It's the value rather than the time that I spent.
I think that can, on the one hand, it can sound intimidating to people who are watching and who are new, because they think like, oh my gosh, well, how do you figure out how to do that? But I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, like just with time in business, and I guess a bit of education too, like those are the two things that have allowed you to go from like doing admin, adding tags, to actually like helping develop a website that is genuinely useful for a customer.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like each project you take on is 50% of you doing work for someone and 50% of you learning things. It's like there's so much you take from each project, and immersing yourself in this like world of online business, or the world of whatever business you're kind of specializing in. So most of my clients have some form of online business or some form of service-based business. You just learn so much that you can then offer them. And it doesn't take you time to offer them that thing. So I end up doing I'm very hands-on when I'm doing my projects. So I'll have a lot of calls with clients. I like doing that. I like to get to know them. I like those kind of coaching type discussions. But it like all of that is not me kind of making an effort to add value. It kind of becomes more natural. Like, the right questions to ask, and the sorts of things that you've seen before and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And it's kind of an unsatisfactory answer, because like I would have wanted to know at the beginning, like, what is the thing that I need to do? But I think sometimes the thing that you need to do is just to be really open to learning, really open to asking lots of questions of your clients and of other colleagues, like other people doing similar things to you. Just trying to be a sponge for learning, investing in your education online, but like being open to the fact that a lot of that learning will also be organic. You just get so much better at what you're doing with some time.
That's great. And then I think another fear of people is like expectations of a client who is spending $10K versus someone who's spending $3K or $5K. Can you tell me about like what is different about working with them, or is there any difference in expectations with those two different clients?
I have found the clients that pay me more money, generally speaking, are lower maintenance. I think it's also the question is less, and this has taken me a long time to like get my head around. And actually, you've been an enormously wise teacher on this. Which is like we look at things through our own lens. So like at the beginning of my business, to me, I was in a position where like I'd always been really financially secure. Suddenly I wasn't. For me, €500 was loads of money. It would have felt like an anxious investment if I was spending €500 on something. So then the way that I was then kind of imagining that the person would feel spending €500 is like, oh, this is going to be loads of money for them and feel quite anxious for them, and they're going to have all these high expectations. But you have to recognize, like, for some people, €500, like if they dropped it on the street, they wouldn't even bend down to pick it up. Like, there are genuinely, people whereby it is, in the grand consequence of their business, such an insignificant amount, they really don't think twice about spending it. And so getting into the head of your client, of course, like we always want to be adding the value, at least the amount of value that somebody's paying us for a thing, like ideally lots more. But you can't, I think you have to be able to, well, for me, it's been really useful to step out of myself and be able to say, actually, like I can't place my own, like how much 10,000 euros means to me onto what it means for this other business. And also, if we can talk in terms of business as opposed to individual, we feel, I think often as web designers, really like close with our clients. It feels very personal, feels very individual, but actually it's a business to business relationship. And like, it's a business investment and you are providing a business service. And so it doesn't need to be as personal as I think sometimes we make it. I think we can say, actually, you know, this is, it's a business investment. This is what I'm providing you. This is what you're providing me. We want it to be mutually beneficial, but that doesn't mean that because there's, 5 figures on the piece of paper that I have to, deliver you something that's completely insane. I have to do my side of the bargain. And that's, I think that helps it feel less intimidating.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and then you are very good on your numbers. And obviously you've really focused on profit in your business, not just the amount of money that a project brings in, but also how much time it takes you and everything. And so I know you figured out your sort of hourly amount that you're making per hour from your business. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, so I crunched my numbers the other day because I was kind of intrigued to look at the different revenue sources in my business and how much time I actually spent on each of those sorts of things, so I could figure out what are the most profitable parts of my business. I was actually really surprised. In my web design client work, it doesn't include the marketing stuff that I've done because, well, firstly, this year I haven't done a lot of that, and I think it's important to say that because the years before that I have done have allowed me to have this year. So that, there is definitely some foundational work that's gone on there. But I've made in the ballpark of $35,000 this year. And I've worked a maximum of 4 to 5 hours a week on client work on average. So I crunched it to be about $150 an hour, in terms of my client work. And so that includes obviously the actual work I'm doing on their websites, any review calls that I have with them, setup calls, handover calls, emails, and other bits of admin. So in terms of, and that's been a split of a few custom projects, and then quite a few VIP days as well. So it's been really interesting to see because actually from that I can figure out what's most profitable. So a VIP day, I charge, I think with the exchange rate, it's about $1,600. It's 1,500 euros, so whatever that is with the exchange rate, and that's for 7 to 8 hours work. So they're even more profitable than my client work overall. So this is where it's quite interesting to say, okay, a custom project that was a 10K project that 10K project that I did actually was probably less profitable than the VIP days that I do. So I think that's always a really just a good question to be asking yourself, when you're setting up your projects and how much you want to charge and things. It's actually take the time to look back and figure out how long stuff took you, because ultimately revenue is one thing, but profitability is the most important thing at the end of the day.
That's so good. Okay. Also, another thing which we had talked about before we started recording was your sort of side money on the side money. So you obviously do client projects and everything, but you were also mentioning that one of your marketing strategies is blogging, and therefore you've also made a good couple grand from some links in there. Can you tell me about what this sort of other revenue stream is?
Yeah, I started, so again, very much inspired by you. And when I did Square Secrets business, the marketing strategy that I really connected with was blogging. It felt like it really worked for me. As a strategy. It just felt it felt like it fitted with me. And so I started blogging kind of at the beginning of my business. My blogs were not very good, but that's what I did. And I kind of did them through the lens of useful information for my clients. So they could do double duty for me. So I could provide, when I was giving my clients their prep work, I could be read this blog and then do this thing. So it didn't feel I guess as scary as I'm writing a blog for all of the internet to read. It was I'm writing a blog for my clients. And so I started doing that. And then over time, I learned more about content marketing. I took Audience Academy and learned a lot of things that I was doing not very well and tweaked some stuff. And got the point, I get a good few thousand visitors on my site every month now. My email list is well over 1,000 now, which is still really small, but it's grown significantly. And I from that, a couple of €1,000, really just from having links in my blog post. So I have a blog post that does really well on plugins for Squarespace. And in that, I put like links to some softwares. I put some links to, and it's actually on free plugins, but I say at the end, I have like my little selection of my favorite paid for plugins. Or like ways if you don't want to have plugins, but you want to like learn to write the code yourself, like here is somebody that can teach you, or this is like if you're wanting to like Chrome extensions, like this is one that's really good for SEO, whatever. And I just like all of them are affiliate links. It says that they're affiliate links. And I probably, a good couple of $100 a month, literally without doing anything else. And that's really like, it's not insignificant money, because I think it's also like, it's also the fact that when I see that money come in, I'm also like, that's actually just paying my expenses for running my business. Like it pays my website subscription, it pays my email software subscription. So it almost like, I don't necessarily see it as income that I take home, but it's almost like, okay, I don't actually have really any expenses in my business because it covers all of that.
Yeah, it eliminates, which is fantastic. I mean, that's what we want. That's perfect. Then the other useful thing as a Squarespace designer is the Circle benefit. Can you tell me about what that is and sort of how you make money through that?
Yeah. So as a Circle member on Squarespace, being a Circle member on Squarespace, basically you have to be an admin on 3 sites. So you have to have contributed to 3 sites. It doesn't mean you have to have 3 websites that you're paying for yourself. So it's a really kind of like easy program or easy thing to be involved in. And you get like the benefit of being involved in it, in that there are like learning opportunities and there's a really cool community and all of that stuff, which is fantastic. But a couple of years ago, they brought in a Circle referral payment, which basically means any website that you start that then somebody either you or somebody else then pays a subscription for, you get a kickback for that. So, and it's not just websites. So it is everything from their Acuity scheduling, the actual websites themselves, e-commerce, I think courses as well, even Squarespace payments now, email marketing. So actually, like, theoretically, if you have a client that you are doing loads of stuff for on Squarespace, you can make like a good $200, $300, $400 of referral benefit from that client. But what I've found as well is, so that's great. Your client benefits as well because they get 20% off their first year. Like, I have mixed feelings about this. So I created 2 years ago, I created a free Squarespace template, which was one of my lead magnets. The reason I have mixed feelings about it is because I feel like in hindsight, had it been paid, I would have made quite a lot more revenue. And I think it was something that was good enough that people should have paid for it. And also, I think that, on reflection, I would have done it slightly differently. But the upside of it was that I was getting, every time somebody made their website live, I was getting a Circle referral benefit from them as well, because I originally started the website. So actually, if you've got a template store or you're wanting to offer a template as well as via your clients, you can access that referral benefit. And I think for a business, I think for the business plan, it's $100, and then it goes up for the commerce plan, etc. And then, as I said, if people have got multiple different things that they're adding on to their subscriptions, you can actually make quite a lot of money off that. So that's really nice. It's a really good thing that they do.
It's good. It's really good. Yeah, it's an extra at least 100, if not few hundred per project. So that's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good like easy adding a few hundred per project hack.
And also, I mean, your clients also like need other things as well, like like they might need a cookie policy, or they might, you might decide actually you want to recommend a different type of email marketing software. So as long as you're explicit and upfront with your clients that what you're sharing with them is an affiliate link to start whatever thing it is, if you're doing websites that have these other things as part of them, you can be getting kickbacks from those as well. So it can be worth a good as you said, a good few hundred just for the Squarespace bit. But if you add the other sorts of things they're doing as well, I know, for example, people that like do Thrivecart integrations with websites, if that's something you're specializing in, and you have a link for Thrivecart, or like there's a bunch of different. basically all softwares will have some form of affiliate link, or almost all of them. So as long as you're upfront with your clients that this is an affiliate link, it means I get a kickback, but it's something I genuinely recommend and use, then, it's kind of a win-win.
Okay, something else to chat about is so as you mentioned, you're living in a country where you don't speak the language, or you are learning. Can relate. Can you talk to me about getting clients outside of your own country? So you, because of the language barrier, haven't really been getting clients in your own country. Also, other people who might they do speak the local language. They might think like, oh, well, people in my country don't have the best budgets, potentially. Can you talk to me about how you're getting clients in other places? Do you find that people in my country don't have the best budgets? Think to be true, not true? Give me the rundown on sort of like the internationalness aspect of your business.
I love that question because at the beginning, I really thought I would specialize in bilingual websites. So I was like, okay, I'll do bilingual French websites for like Gitoners, or like there's loads of like tourism places in France whereby they want to be able to appeal to a UK market, English speaking market rather. And therefore I speak a bit of French, not amazingly, but like I also have a husband who is French. So, I have a kind of translator on the side. And I was like, okay, I could kind of do something with this. It's turned out I think I've never worked for a French client in the whole time I've run my business, maybe once, for a couple of reasons. One is actually, like, I have found at least the groups that I have been part of. So like I'm in a few like expat French business groups on Facebook and things like that. The sorts of budgets that people have there are just they're not in line with the budget that for the clients I want to work with. So it might be that I haven't just tapped into the right kind of network here, but I found, generally speaking, the budgets have been lower, certainly compared to my US-based clients. But actually, I haven't ever had to work enormously hard. Like, it never has seemed to be a reservation for anybody working with me that I'm based like on a Caribbean island that's technically France. And even actually my US clients paying in euros, I advertise in euros. I think as far as I'm aware, that's what I have to do because I'm a French-based business. I don't think I have the option to have my prices in dollars, but it's never been a reservation. It's never been an issue for my clients. And so I would say, like, it's really making sure that you're marketing where your clients are that you want to find. And so if you're in a country whereby the budgets are lower, or you're in a country whereby you don't speak the language and therefore you don't feel confident to work in that country. Like, I speak pretty good French now, but I like still don't feel confident to work in French. I feel like I wouldn't understand or be able to keep up as much, or like my written French also is terrible, and you kind of want to have a level of professionalism, which I don't think I can achieve with my level of written French. So for me, it's been like, okay, where are the people that I want to work with based, and where will they see me? And then marketing to those sectors. I guess a place that it could be more challenging for people is if, for example, if you're based in a country and English, like your English is not amazing and you want to speak with an Anglophone market, that could be more of a challenge. In terms of like breaking into that market. But then also you could think about, okay, are there expats from your country living in the US, for example, who then that's a specific market that you could be tapping into. So I think it's just being really intentional, and I honestly don't think that there's any limitation. It's one of the best jobs in the world to be able to work with really such interesting people from all over the world if you want to. And if you want to have US, you want to price in US like investment levels, work with clients in the US and price at US levels. Like, you absolutely can wherever you're based.
Yeah, I was always afraid when I was doing website projects that like my clients wouldn't like if I was like living kind of far away or something. And so I like didn't say where it was or wasn't. I just didn't kind of talk about it, if anything. And then I realized over time, literally no one cared. Like, they do not care. And I would just do like the calls in the time that was convenient for them. And that was totally fine. And so, yeah, it seems like you've had the same experience. Okay, the other thing which I wanted to kind of circle back to, we haven't actually talked about this. So you did take my courses. Can you tell me about like, why did you think you should take that? Or like, why did they seem like the right investment, if that makes sense?
So I hummed and hawed a lot at the beginning. Like, as I explained, I went from a position where I was like pretty financially secure to suddenly not being. And so like the investment for the courses felt like a really big deal for me at the time. And like, I didn't have a great deal of belief in myself at that point in time. Like, my confidence was really low. I think, again, because I'd had I'd had a really positive like career and experience, and I'd been in a really good place. And then I kind of learned that stuff could disappear outside of my control, and it kind of, it knocked my confidence. I think some people would have dealt with it much better, but me, I found that really hard. So actually, like, as I said, I hummed and hawed a lot because I was like, oh, I don't know, like, am I going to be able to make this work? Am I not going to be able to make this work? Like, this feels like a lot of money to invest. I don't know. And then in the end, I was like, do you know what? I just feel like I need somebody to lay it out for me, because I worked in a business for 10-ish years. I'd had like lots of things I thought I knew how to do, but it wasn't really resulting in my business being successful. I had like a handful of clients. I wasn't earning very much money. I felt like I just wasn't like, there were too many questions I didn't know, but I also didn't know what I didn't know. So I was like, I'm just not sure. I'm like, do I need to know this? Do I need to know that? And so in the end, like Tuesday, I remember I bought Square Secrets business just before Christmas. And like, I was back in the UK for Christmas with my family, and I literally was like up in the attic room, like going through all of the modules. And there was like, a big part of me was like, why didn't I get this like 6 months earlier? Because a lot of the start of my business would have been so much easier. And I think I would have had a lot more confidence from the beginning as well. Because I didn't know what I didn't know, I was like worried I was like missing, like dropping a ball. I wasn't going to do a good job for my clients. And like going through the course, like, first, he told me I was doing a lot of things right, and that gave me so much more confidence. I increased my prices really quickly. I just felt like, yes, I am doing things right. But secondly, like, there was a bunch of stuff that I didn't know, I hadn't thought about, a lot to do with actually like running the business side of things, which surprised me because I kind of saw myself as being like professionally quite experienced, but actually hadn't run my own business before, and it's completely different. Yeah, so my decision in the end came from like, I just feel like there's something I'm missing. If I could go back and talk to myself, I would have said, just like, get it at the beginning and use it as your roadmap. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to overcomplicate this. Like, it is absolutely doable and not as scary as investment. And again, it's that thing, it's like, seeing it as a business investment changes it completely in terms of the mindset I had around it. Like, now looking back, I'm like, well, that was like the best investment ever when I look at all of the money that I've made in my business since. At the time, it felt like a lot, but like, actually, no, it's a business investment. So it kind of depersonalized it, made it much less emotional as a decision looking back. And so now when I'm making the kind of decisions to invest in education for my business, my question is like, what's the ROI going to be? Or what do I expect? Do I anticipate it's going to be? How is it going to move my business forward? And I kind of really think about it through that lens of, so yeah, like a business investment. And I wish that I'd done that back then. It would have made probably the first year at least, like a million times easier and probably a lot more profitable too.
Yeah, it's interesting how you say that. And I totally agree. It's like when we go to university, for example, it's like we don't for a second consider really like how much, I mean, it could be that you're like, you know, new to functioning with money at that age. But it's like you don't at all consider like, oh, I'm going to go drop, I don't know, 60 grand or 4 years or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, cool. Sounds good. But like when it comes to things like this, it's like, I'm not sure. Is that worth it? And it's like, it's interesting to me. But I fully hear you. And I also agree that like my way that I make financial decisions earlier in the business, like at the very, very, very beginning, which I totally get, is like you're not dealing in like business prices, if that makes sense. You're like a normal consumer. And so it is different. So yeah. Can you tell me what were the things that you, what were the things that you felt like you were like running in circles with before the course? And then what was sort of like more clear to you afterwards? What was like the big game changer of it, if that makes sense?
I think the big game changer was like simplifying things. I felt like I had to justify being paid X amount of money. I had to like somehow have this like hugely complex, very, very, detailed, over the top process that was super personalized to every client that just took hours to be able to deliver. Like, I think it was just, it was feeling like everything had to be so well. Like, again, I think this was a money mindset thing, but I was like, if they're paying me this much money, I have to like do all of this stuff. And actually what I learned from the course is, no, like what you need to do is you need to do what's in your contract, and you need to, and in that contract, it doesn't need to be this like crazy list of things. It can be super simple. It can be, you know, a 5 or 6 page Squarespace website, with X, Y, but maybe not Z. And like that is what you're being paid for. And then, yes, if they want this thing on top or that thing on top, yeah, you can maybe do it for them if you want to, but that will cost X amount more money. So for me, like the mindset around that was a game changer, but also the practical things around that. So that like the templates in the course, actually seeing how somebody does it or seeing how you did it was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, it doesn't need to be this thing that I've made up in my head that it needs to be. And so that, like, I think we talk a lot about like making more money. Like, did I make more money from this project? Did I charge this amount of money? Like for me, the question that probably the thing that was like more valuable from that was like, how much time is this stuff taking you? Because you can like charge 5,000 euros or 10,000 euros or 50,000 euros, whatever, for a project. If it takes you, if it's too difficult to deliver, it takes you too much time, it's unenjoyable, like that is just as important as the money. And so like I would prefer a much like a smaller investment project that's really easy to turn around. Like I've started doing quite a lot of VIP days now. So I do a website, like a simple website in a day. And like, that's like super joyful because it's very, very simple. It's very, very time efficient. It works out to be super profitable. And so I think the course taught me like, you can keep things simple, but it's also like profitability is not just the revenue. It's like how much time you're spending. And then running a business is like also about joy. Like, are you enjoying this? Because if you're not, like, you might as well go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I love those takeaways. That's fantastic. I love that. Okay. And then final one, which I have for everyone, is if someone's on the fence, if they're not sure if they should take the courses, what would you say? You've been through them. What are your opinions?
So, like I said, I think the question that I wish I'd asked myself was, what's my goal? And what's the fastest way that I'm going to get to my goal? And I, in the vast majority of cases, if your goal is to run a successful web design business, be that as a side hustle, which my business is essentially a side hustle, or be it as your full-time job, but be it as something that you want to develop slowly alongside what you're currently doing, or whether it's something you feel like, I actually need to start this tomorrow and start earning money because I've lost my job, or because my husband's moving posts and I need to follow him and I need a business of my own, or something like that. Like, if your goal, whatever timeline, in whatever way, is to have a successful web design business, it's honestly hard for me to see a better way to get from current state to that state than taking the course, because you're not only getting like, I think the things that I took away, so I've talked a lot about the takeaways, but like, how did I get those takeaways through the course? I got them because there's literally broken down as a roadmap, like do this, do that, do that. So you can't really go too far wrong if you follow the steps. 2, there's like loads of mindset stuff in there, which, I mean, maybe I'm tarnishing people with my own brush here, but like, I think for most people, the thing that holds them back the most is mindset. And there's so much in the course that helps you reset that and look at that differently. 3, there's the fact that you literally can take templates and use them. And so like, you're not having like the amount of time and stress you save over being able to do that. And of course, if you decide to develop them over time, you can do, but you've got the foundations. And then 4, you've got community. And like, starting a business is so lonely, or can be so lonely, but having a community of people who are doing a similar thing or have done a similar thing is just like a massive, massive win-win. So for me, like, honestly, if you're here, you've maybe done a few sites, haven't done any sites. For me, I've done a few, and you've got a goal which is here, and that then you're really clear that's what you want to do. then yeah, I think the fastest way to get from, and the most enjoyable and the least stressful way to get from A to B is to take the course.
That's so great. I love that. And that was very like well thought through sort of like explanation and like reasoning. And so I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Helen.
Wasn't that inspiring? Hearing real success stories like this remind us that building the business of your dreams is absolutely possible, and it starts with finding the right clients. The best client finding method isn't about chasing the latest trend or jumping on every shiny object that someone says is the thing these days. It's about truly discovering a strategy that feels natural and works for you and helps you connect with the clients that you actually want to work with. So if you want to figure this out for yourself, take my quiz, which client finding method matches your personality type, and in it, you'll uncover the perfect way to land your dream clients without the overwhelm or the endless trial and error of all the different strategies. Click the link below or head to pagefronten.com/quiz to take the quiz and start building your web designer dream business today. I can't wait to hear about which result you get.